Very good.
Thank you, brother.
Okay, today when I upload this, which will be tomorrow, you're going to get two videos. This is Frankie and Crow. We came to North Beach. The other video I made, we were at Timmons, and tomorrow, which is the day you're going to see the video, I speak in mysteries because I don't put this up until tomorrow, so I kind of talk that way. But when you see this video on, let's see, today, you see it Wednesday, we're going to also be going to Kingsville with David, my friend David. We're going to do a little fellowship. Now, I told Crow, Crow didn't make a lot of the meetings I was doing a couple years ago. Frankie was in the meetings that I did at Angel's Halfway House.
Yeah, right.
But I had a few guys that we would drive all the way, I was telling them, and on the way back, sometimes we stopped here at North Beach. And we just picked up some sodas and snacks, and I get the cigarettes. I used to get the cheap cigarettes. That was what. So today's kind of restoring some of that. I wanted to mention a few things because after I made the first video, then I talked to a friend of mine for a while. His name is Alan. Alan is like an apostle. The gift of apostle, the Bible talks about in a certain way. And I've known Alan. He's been homeless for many years. But look, Alan, even though he looks like you didn't catch him on video because I didn't have it on, but he's been in some of the famous churches here in Corpus Christi, and people like the churches that are in the gifts of the Spirit and all, which I believe in. I've heard pastors say when Alan comes in, this is apostle sent to you. You know, a lot of those interesting things happen with Alan. But I talked to Alan for about maybe an hour, and the guys were waiting for me because we were going to come out here and do a little fellowship. But you know, it's interesting because I asked Alan, how you doing, brother? And he just wanted to really be able to talk because he very much has had a lot of years doing preaching, being in ministry. And sometimes the churches that Alan would attend, they'll receive him, but then later maybe it's kind of like he shared that history with me a few times, like, oh, they don't want me to come back, John, or whatever. But it's interesting because this is what Alan was telling me, and he's very gifted, the older man I'm telling you about. He said, you know, John, a lot of the churches, he says, they want to build good churches, and they want to start their churches, and he knows many of the pastors. He said, but you know, in the parable of what we call the prodigal son, that there was, Jesus told a story. He said, there's a guy that had 100 sheep, but then one of them got lost, and he left the 99 and he went after the one. And Alan is telling me, which I also believe in, he said, really the job of the church or the Christians are to go after the ones that are astray. It's not to like live your whole life amongst other Christians that are all in church and everybody's doing well. And Alan was telling me, but most of those pastors, John, he said, they're missing their calling because they're not really going after the one. And I said, you know, Alan, I said, we were talking about some of that today. And then he also brought up what we discussed on our video. He was talking about Jesus as deity. That question came up on maybe after I shut the first video off, the question of the deity of Christ came up. And my friend Bobby, who you see speaking on the first video, he's very knowledgeable in the Bible. And somebody else brought up that Jesus is not God. And I understood, I believe in the deity of Christ, and I tried to explain. I said, well, some people, I said, but Jesus was God in the flesh. So the discussion we were having was called the deity of Christ. And Bobby was a little upset because he knows the Bible well. And as I spoke to Alan, Alan was quoting these verses. He says, you know, John talked about angels, which we were discussing. And then he said, he was quoting a verse that said, I think he wants a cigarette first.
I'm sorry. You want here? Okay,
this is part of the fellowship. And Alan was quoting the verses from Isaiah that say, calls Jesus the everlasting Father, the mighty God, the Prince of Peace. That's from the book of Isaiah. It's talking about Jesus, and it says, everlasting Father. And then I quoted the one from Hebrews, where it's talking about Jesus, and it says, to none of the angels did God say, your throne is forever. But to the Son he saith, your throne, O God. And those are references to what we call the deity of Christ. And then Alan was saying, and you know, when the doubting disciple Thomas doubted that Jesus rose from the dead, and then Jesus appears to Thomas in the Gospels and says, touch the hole in my hand, put your hand, and my Apostle Alan was saying, Thomas said back to Jesus, my Lord and my God. Now all of that was true, and that was about the deity of Jesus. And it was interesting because that was part of our discussion today, which had to do with the deity of Christ. And so that's why I very rarely will do 2 videos like in one day. But I want you to see that this is how, today I didn't know I'd run into Crow or Frankie. Yeah. Tomorrow I'm going to take a few guys and we're going to go to Kingsville and do another fellowship. But what I usually tell everybody, if you watch the videos with Pops, I didn't re-watch this, but I remember. The last video, Pops died. Pops, see, look, Crow didn't know. A lot of the guys, Pops died. Some of my friends don't know. And Crow knew Pops. Pops died a couple months ago. And I, of course, on the videos, I've discussed it a lot. He was an old friend of mine, Frankie, that I was helping. And so you get to see, Crow found out. A lot of things we know from word of mouth, friends that are on the streets and all. But I remember this, the last video that I made with Pops. I was at David Martin's apartment, and an old friend that Pops knew for years by the name of Jude McCusker. That was the first time they got together in maybe a year. So it was like a little reunion, and I remember on the video, I'll tell you a little secret here. On the video I said, I want you guys to share, to talk. I said, and every video we make, I said, think of it as your last video. Now, I don't want you guys scared, like, man, he said that to Pops and he died. But I tell people, think of it as, what would you tell people if you felt this is, because some of my friends, you ain't seen them in a while on the video, so I tell them, look, this is opportunity. And I remember that day I said that to Pops. Now, Pops talks a lot, and he did share, talked about Jesus. Some guys didn't share. And sure enough, that was the last time I saw Pops. I had no idea he was going to pass away. But I say that because what I try to tell people is every one of us has a message, a story that could maybe help other people. And so every time we open the video, whether tomorrow will be my friend David, who I have a long history with, many years, David. The original church I started, David was one of the guys. And if he wants, I'll let him tell some of the stories. But I just became friends with David. We were the same age, and he became involved in the preaching I was doing. But every one of us is going to have an impact. And I just wanted to mention how my older friend Alan, who you did not see on the video, but who's been around for many years, he was just talking about how God revealed a lot of things over the years to him. He was saying so much. He said, John, he said, you know, a lot of pastors, he said, they don't want to be on the streets because, he says, they're afraid. And, you know, I'm not afraid to be on the streets. But those of you that watch the videos, sometimes I'm like, that's it, I'm done. You know, but I get bored unless I'm interacting with people. And I thought that was really a word because I'm not, you know, if you're doing ministry, the most of it is simply, quote, in the church building, and I think you're missing out on the experiences that people have. As we drove up here just a few minutes ago, I told Crow and Frankie, I said, you know, a lot of people rent these hotels here, these kind of, you know, maybe $1,000 a night or whatever. I said, and they just do it so they could come out here. I said, all that money. I said, I get a lot of homeless friends that come out here and it doesn't cost them $1,000 a night. Now, I'm not saying it's great to be homeless. I'm saying a lot of people are spending all their time, even church ministry, in some building somewhere. And I think they're missing out on, like Alan said, go after the one sheep that's lost, okay? That was kind of why I wanted to redo it, to give you a little update. And I always do a surprise whenever I come out here. Always a surprise. I got a brother in the back. I don't know who that is. One time I did a whole teaching video, like one of these benches up there a little more. That's the Lexington. And I remember when I was done, there's a bunch of people that were right behind me, which was fine. They were listening to the whole thing, but I didn't realize, they were there. But that was fine. They were just hanging out. I baptized, I'm still in Crow, I baptized Lance out here a couple years ago. I baptized a few people out here. What I might wind up doing, after I shut the video, I might wind up just jumping in and swimming. I just take the shoes off and I swim, and then I get the car wet. I make sure my wallet and everything's down. Do any of you guys want me to baptize you in this North Beach? If you want, the video stays on and the other one holds the video. But I always offer that. Does anybody want to get baptized? Baptism, Crow, as you know, I have a lot of ministry with a lot of Catholics. I go to the Cathedral Catholic Church up here. That's really my home church. But baptism, you're not supposed to, or it doesn't happen more than once. But what I do with some of the guys that were baptized, a lot of Protestants tell Catholics, we do not recognize your Catholic baptism. I don't say that, because my Catholic baptism as a child, I still recognize that. Later, yes, I don't reject a lot of... I was going to say Mormon church. I have a lot of friends. Those are my friends that are very theological. What I do, Jimmy D was Mormon, and even I told Jimmy, and I did baptize him. Oh, were you here when I didn't even know Crow was ever in those. But what I tell the guys normally, I remember I kidded Jimmy because I told Jimmy, whenever you guys want to get baptized, you can get baptized. And some of them had said, oh, John, I was baptized as a Mormon, or I was baptized as a Catholic. Look, I don't get into the debates with the guys. I tell them that's okay. I said that what we're trying to, baptism signifies like a cleansing, a new washing, and some of the guys I think need that. Some of them want to do it more than once. I think Matt I baptized, Cameron I baptized, then Matt, I'm ready to go again. I said, well, I don't. But I remember Jimmy, when I told Jimmy D, I guess Crow held the camera the day I baptized him. I told Jimmy, I said, look, whenever you want to get baptized. And then one time he told me, because he's Mormon, he said, well, I asked my mom, and my mom said, I should get baptized. I said, well, that's all right. I was kidding him. I said, that's all right, brother, if you want to disobey God's word. Why? I said, well, there's that verse that says, if thou askest thou mom if you should be baptized, thou art in rebellion. Of course, that was a joke, but I mention it because I do this as, it's not an official, you're getting baptized, quote, by a church. Jesus and John the Baptist, they did baptisms, Jordan River, water and stuff. And for the guys that I feel, whatever they want, I always make the offer. I didn't tell them, if you want, you can get baptized. And I didn't just come out here for that. But if any of you feel like you want to get dunked, it's going to be a cleansing, like, that's how we see it, as we're identifying. That needs our. So it's up to you. If not, we don't do it. It's up to you. And I always make that offer. And if not, you could also share something. Or if you want to, does anybody want to take the plunge? The way I do it is I just baptize. Well, you see me do it. Mm-hmm. I just say this is like a fresh beginning, and then we go on there. Mm-hmm. And you got to live by what I do is I leave my camera and I take my wallet out and I leave it here with the person who's going to videotape. In the wallet, I always have $1,000 that I also leave on the I'm just kidding. Frank is like, okay. No. Anybody wants to take the dip, you're up to you. I'm not forcing anybody.
No, I'm good right now.
Okay, Frankie.
I don't care. I just might have to make it up and more clothes.
Yeah, that's right. If you want it, you can. It's a problem. That's right. Sometimes I get wet, but I change my clothes. Maybe next time I just throw that out because I always do that.
Unless you guys ain't any clothes for me, will you?
I have clothes at the house, Frankie. If you want to go in.
I mean, the Lord means more to me than anything.
If you feel that what it represents.
No, it's the illness. The illness and crying.
Yeah.
I worry about that.
Yeah. If you want to go in and get baptized, what we'll do is we'll go in, and then we'll be wet, and then when we go back to the house, I give you some jeans and a shirt. But I always make that offer. To me, it's not a pressure thing.
Okay.
to me, it's the thing where I tell the guys, because sometimes we feel like the Bible talks about getting defiled, getting dirty because we're in the world, and we sometimes just feel dirty. And oftentimes people that were involved in all types of stuff, they like, I know Jesus forgave me, and sometimes they feel, I've heard stories of like people, girls that were hookers for years or whatever, and then they said, I can't wash it off of me. Baptism doesn't, quote, wash it off of people, but they feel like, oh.
Yeah.
And baptism to me, when I do it in this manner,
Yeah.
it's just
Right.
for the people that feel. And
Well, I thought
you want to do it, Frank? Crow, you're going to hold the camera again.
Sure.
Yeah, let me see how. Okay, so we're going to do baptism. This will be. Yeah, shoes off. I go in with my shirt and pants. I just take my wallet out, and I let Crow just hold it.
Oh yeah.
That way, because I
mean, guys,
this is Wednesday, and then when we go back to the house, Frank, and then I'll look into the clothes in the dryer.
okay, that'd be good.
And this was unplanned, but this is something we were doing a lot a few years ago.
That'd be good. A big shirt.
Yes, you take it off.
No, leave right here.
I leave everything on.
Well, I know. Still.
But you can.
No.
All right.
Where do you go to?
You can take my socks. Don't get naked.
No, over here. I got to talk to him.
Go there. It is good, Crow. And then you can narrate.
Let's go.
Tell some of your story if you want.
All right.
Talk about anything that you like to do here.
Okay.
As soon as I'm done baptizing Frankie, I'm going to swim a little. So when I'm done and I give you the high sign, you just hit that red camera button and it'll shut it.
Okay.
That way you don't have to keep.
All right. My name is Crow, and on John's note, I will like to give a story about the deity of Christ and how it was best described to me. But I don't want to miss the baptism, so here we go. As you can see, he takes it very seriously, Frankie. If not reluctantly. There he goes. All right. And you see their baptism. And now my story about the deity, the way it described to me was Christ is like if you were out in an empty lot and they're fixing to pave a road in there, and there's some ants down there, and you know that this paving machine and everything is going to destroy them and their whole colony, and you want to save them. Well, how would you do that? If you're a man and you walk over there and start trying to grab all the ants to move them, well, of course they're going to bite you and sting you because they don't know you or understand you. And of course the only solution is that you descend down to their size and their likeness, but retain your upper level of knowledge, so that you can tell them about what is coming and what they need to do to escape this this destiny. And that's what was best described to me, as for the deity of Christ. And on that note, I will let them continue swimming, go guard your things, and you have a blessed day. Thank you.